The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our ConnectALL Product Demonstration webinar series. My name is Veritas Cruz, and I'll be your moderator for today together with my colleague, Marat. In this session, I'm pleased to introduce you to Doug Buzz, our integration expert and solution architect, who will show you how integration between Servicenow and HP ALM works using ConnectALL. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the session, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will bring them up after the presentation. We will have time for Q&A at the end. Next, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. We will send you the link afterwards. And last, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. Without further ado, I'm handing it over now to Doug. Doug?
Thank you, Marites, and thank you everybody for joining our demonstration series. Today we're going to talk about Servicenow and ALM. I'll show you a demo and we'll have our Q&A session, but before that I want to talk a little bit about the why you would want to have such an application in place. We're going to talk about the blessing and the curse of all the information overload that we have these days, how to bridge that gap, and then go into the demo. A little bit about myself. I'm a systems and solution architect for the ConnectALL product. Integration guru. I've been doing this pretty much all my life. Visionary, keep an eye on the products, on the industry, go to a lot of conferences and speak where I've met a lot of you. And I'm also a sailor, so that is my true love. So on to the session. Information, of course, it's now self-service. We get it from everywhere. Maybe we get too much. We no longer have volumes of technical manuals in your office or at home because we don't need them anymore. We can simply do a Google search or look on YouTube if you want to figure out how to fix something in your car. There's just so many sources of information now. It's quite interesting how all this information has coalesced together. You can pretty much answer any question you want. Of course, one of the challenges is whenever you ask a question, you get back a trillion hits. So that's certainly the problem with the information overload, is that we have so much information coming at us. Whether it's hundreds of emails every day, or like I said, when we're using a tool like Google, so much information is available to be able to wade through that, to research it, to identify what information our sources are good or not so good. So it can take a lot of time, and of course take a lot of time away from your job. Getting the real work done is finding the answers, formulating them, and presenting them. So of course our days, they're full of meetings and emails and voicemails and all of that. So we understand that these are the solutions in a modern day business environment, and we want to be able to help you with that. And today I want to help you understand better how our solutions can help you get over this information overload. One very interesting book that I've been reading, Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think Revisited. It's kind of interesting the way he presents it, but it's a very good resource material if you would like to take a look at it. So of course, as we know, in the modern environment, work is being done in many applications within the enterprise. It used to be we were all in a Word document or on a file share, and there was one place for information. These days, different business units, different departments, even different roles. Testers might be using a quality center, and your service agent Servicenow, your developers may be using Jira. So there's a wide variety of tools at play in the marketplace and within your environment, I'm sure. And that's a good thing. Everybody is getting the right kind of tool. You know, if they need a screwdriver, they're getting a screwdriver. But it also means that there's a lot of information silos across the enterprise where if you had access to that information, it would really help you do your job better. So I could hire a robot to go out and find all this information, give you immediate feedback, help with the collaboration, right? I mean, you've got a team over here and a team over there, and instead of using voicemails or meetings, why not use these tools to collaborate back and forth? And of course, reduce human error. I mean, if you're doing copy paste between these applications to try to keep these applications in sync manually, a robot would be nice that could do that for you to reduce the errors in copying that information. So that's the whole idea behind the ConnectALL Integration Platform, is we want something easy to deploy, something easy to set up. You don't have to program it. It's all point and click. It's very flexible. It can run on we have a cloud version. We have an on-premise version if you want to stay behind your firewall. We support what we call hybrid, which is maybe you have some applications on premise and some applications in the cloud. So we can handle all those scenarios and lots of different applications that we connect with. Like I was saying, maybe service tickets in Servicenow, and requirements in Jira, and defects or tests over in ALM. So how do you get all these people collaborating, working together, communicating more efficiently? Well, that's the whole idea of ConnectALL. So the basic idea behind ConnectALL is it's one simple application that you download and install. Once you install it, you log in through your browser to the mapping screen. And the mapping screen, you pick and choose what data you want to synchronize between your applications. And then there's a background engine that's the synchronization engine. It's the one that has the smarts that knows how to synchronize the data between all the different applications. When you install this, you don't have to install anything extra. It includes everything you need except for a small database. You can use MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, or Postgres, whatever you like. And that's basically what we'll use to store the record links, the records that are being synchronized, the IDs of the records. So from a process perspective, you can see we're using these tools for different reasons. The data is flowing between the application, and that's what ConnectALL is going to facilitate, is help you to move this information around your different applications, your different silos of data. So now we're going to go into the demo, but some of the possible use cases is in an ALM to Servicenow integration. Obviously, in Servicenow, you're going to have a number of different kinds of record types that are getting created. Maybe incidents or problems, those would typically be mapped to probably ALM defects. So a Servicenow request comes in, maybe an incident. Someone will probably review that incident, triage it, say, yes, it does need to go over to our development team. So then ConnectALL could synchronize it over into ALM as a defect. Then a person in ALM would review it, understand what the issue is, maybe what product it affects, for example. Maybe they'll have a question. They can collaborate back and forth through emails, or I need an attachment, I need a screenshot or a log file. They can do all of that between the applications. So maybe eventually as a defect gets solved and released, then that status is sent back to Servicenow. So it's keeping everybody in sync in real time of what's going on back and forth. Another scenario that we've seen is you're creating tasks over in Servicenow. Install the server or upgrade the security patch, and all of those could also be synchronized over in ALM as a task, maybe as a different kind of requirement, a requirement type. Servicenow has packages to do agile management, to do epics and stories. All those could be synchronized over to ALM as other kinds of requirement types, like a story you could create. And then just recently, we created the integration between the Servicenow test package over to the ALM test. So that's also a possibility. So lots of different ways that you can integrate these two applications. It really depends on your processes, what your pain points are, and what teams need to work together more smoothly. So with that in mind, let me show you what ConnectALL looks like once you download it and install it. So you'll install it, takes maybe 10 minutes. Once you install it, you'll log into the browser, and typically this is an interface that the administrator or project lead would use, not your individual users. So the admin would log in and they would simply pick and choose what applications that they want to integrate. Say one of them is Quality Center. Another one can be Servicenow or Jira or HP Service Manager. I mean, we support about 40 different applications: IBM Rational products, Microsoft products, Remedy, Ranrex, lots of different applications that we support. We even have a custom API adapter. So maybe you've created some custom applications in-house and you want to integrate those through the ConnectALL Data Hub. You can use that using our remote adapter. We also have an adapter to relational databases. So if you want to read or write data to your relational databases, you can integrate that also. But in our case, we're going to look at ALM and Servicenow. So pick the two applications that you want to integrate, give it some unique name, and then you can start mapping the data that you want to synchronize between the applications. This is what we call an application link. I have over 200 of those created. I can enable them, disable them, manage them however I would like. I can even assign them to security groups, which I'll talk about in a minute. So once you've selected the two applications that you want to integrate, your next step is to go in and do the actual mapping. So the first step is to select the URLs of the two applications that you want to integrate, a user ID that has permissions to grab the metadata, in other words, the project names, the field names. Doesn't need to be an admin. Typically something with a project manager will have enough permissions to grab that data. And then decide how you want to handle conflicts. Conflicts occur in a bi-directional integration when the same field, the same record changes at the same time in two systems. We have several different ways that we can handle that. Master of record, you can choose one system or the other to be the master, or whoever made the change first, whoever made the change last. So once you've done that, you can then go to the entity mapping. Within ALM, of course, you have domains. So you select what domain your project is in, select any of the projects that you have, and then any of the issue types that you have over on the ALM side. And then, of course, over on the Servicenow side, they use what they call table names. So we support incidents and problems and tasks, tables that are derived from tasks, tests, lots of different, either standard or custom database tables that you've selected. So you select what table you want to integrate with. And we also support the staging table approach, so that if you prefer to go through a staging table before the data goes to your production table, you could select that also. We have some other advanced properties associated with this. Attachments, you can synchronize entire attachments. If you want, you can just sync the URL and that will save some bandwidth on your network. Just click on the URL when you want to see the attachment. You can select what user you want to use to actually synchronize the data. Doesn't need to be an admin, just anyone with read and write permission. And then the poll query. And the poll query is very important for something like Servicenow because you probably don't want all of the incidents in Servicenow synchronized to HP. You probably want to review or triage those tickets in Servicenow, and maybe after you've triaged them, then you would send them over to ALM. So you can use this poll filters like a subselect on either side that you want, actually. Maybe you only want to synchronize particular products or components, for example, releases, whatever. We do synchronize the data in two different ways. You can poll. In other words, we'll send a query to the application like Servicenow every minute, every 5 minutes, as often as you want, to tell us what data has changed since the last poll. You can also use what we call a push. You can create a trigger in the application and push the data to ConnectALL if you would prefer to do that. We support both unidirectional, bidirectional. You can also control the create versus update. So maybe you want to create tickets, but if they're changed, you don't want to update the source system. Not so usual to do it in this kind of system, but if you're synchronizing requirements and they're baselined, probably don't want to change the baseline requirements. So you have full control over that. So once you've done your entity mapping, the last thing to do is your field mapping. So you'll be able to see the list of all the fields in one application and all the fields in the other application, both standard and custom fields. And you simply pick and choose the two fields you want to integrate, choose what direction you want the data to go, bi-directional, one direction or another, and hit the plus, and that'll add that field to the list of fields getting synchronized. As you can see, we're going in different directions. We have some custom fields, standard fields. You can also change some other things like the conflict management strategy. Maybe this one field we want to use a different strategy. You can do that. You can also change the data type. So data types for fields are listed, and you can modify those to some other different data type. You can also control the create versus update down at the field level. Last of all, you can do value mapping. So maybe the values in the two systems aren't the same. Like here it's 1 low versus 3 low. So you can map those 1-to-1, 1-to-many, any direction you want. We can have more advanced mappings like if then else statements, default mappings on creating a new record. So once you've done all of your mapping, you would save this. And when you save it with a check-in comment. That's because we save all the old versions. So maybe you had a version and you want to come back to the old one, you can do that. So once you save this, we start synchronizing the data automatically in the background. We have a dashboard where you can see the records that are getting synchronized in real time. And you can see all your application links, how often they're synced. If you want to change the interval, you can click on the green link. Like this one every 3 hours. If I want to sync it right now, I could just click on the blue link. I can also see the error record, the error records down at the record level. So I can click on what that error is. Maybe I forgot to map a required field, for example. I could fix that mapping. Click here, it'll resync that one record to make sure my mapping is correct. I can also see the successful records too, if that's preferable. If you have a specific record you're looking at, you need to put in record ID and search for that record ID. We also have throughput reporting, so you can see how much data is getting synchronized between your applications. We send out alarms under different conditions on a sync failure, on a field conflict, on an application outage, by default to your system admins, but if you'd like, we can send those to your project leads. In fact, your project leads can manage their own projects. We would simply add them in as a user into the ConnectALL console, put them in a security group so they can manage only their own projects, and then they can set up their own mappings. When they log into ConnectALL, we would store their password in the ConnectALL database encrypted, or if you want, you can hook up to your LDAP or Active Directory to authenticate those users. Of course, you can also set up what email server to use for notifications, or what database you're going to use in the background to store the record links. We support Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, and Postgres. And then last of all, what Mule server. All of this runs on top of the MuleSoft Enterprise Service Bus, which is included in the installer. You don't have to install that separately. You can specify where your Mule server is running. Last of all is the licensing. The licensing is done by application servers. So say you wanted to integrate 3 HPs and 2 ServiceNows, you would buy a license for each, or a total of 5 licenses from the ConnectALL product. Sales can help you more in determining the pricing of those adapters for you. Over on our website, we have a complete set of documentation, other blogs, frequently asked questions, lots of information, In fact, I have one up here now. This is the Servicenow Adapter. It talks about the new test management feature that we now provide. The other setup features available in each of the connectors, and all the other features too that we just talked about within the user interface. We also have the install guide, the upgrade guide, and the developer's guide. You can do scripting on the ConnectALL server to modify the data in real time as it moves from application to application. That's useful if you have like really complex business rules. We're able to do that. Just from the user's point of view, the user really doesn't see any difference in their application. They can be using ServiceNow, they could be creating tickets. The user interface looks like it always does. Of course, now maybe you're synchronizing data, you're sending comments back and forth or attachments that you weren't doing before. I can configure this one so I could see the record ID of the other system. You can do that if you want, you don't need to, or we can just add in another comment. And in about a minute or so, when that synchronizes, then that will synchronize over to the Quality Center side. And then over in the Quality Center, this was a test that I previously did. Very similar scenario. The user interface doesn't change. You can see the data from the other application, and it can keep things back in sync. Actually, I have the issue ID of the ServiceNow ticket over on this side too. So that's pretty much my presentation. If you have any questions, Marites would be glad to raise those.
All right. There are a couple of questions here from the audience. First question, Doug. Could you elaborate what are the deployment options for ConnectALL?
Absolutely. So we can deploy ConnectALL. Again, ConnectALL is a separate application. It can be deployed either on your network, on a virtual machine inside your firewall, or you can use our cloud version that's already hosted. Simply tell us you want to use that. We'll send you the login information for that. And of course, if you want to host it on with your own provider, maybe AWS or Azure, Rackspace, we've used all of those in the past. So we'd be glad to implement one of those. Of course, the scenario that your network engineers will be concerned with is if you're using a ConnectALL deployed outside your network, can it connect to the applications inside your network? Of course, those are simple firewall rules. We continue to use the same ports that your applications use. And of course, we'll use SSL if your applications are configured to use it.
As a follow-up question to that, I have a ServiceNow Cloud and on-premise version of ALM. Does it really matter if one is a cloud version and one is on-prem?
Yeah, the real issue there is the network. As long as we can get through, the traffic can get through the network. So for example, say you were sitting at your desk in the office, and from your desk, can you connect to ServiceNow? Going through the firewall, connecting on the cloud application. If you can, then ConnectALL could do the same thing. It would go through the same firewall, the same port, all the same configuration. So we'd be glad to work with your network engineers and help you engineer that solution.
All right, we have another question here. You mentioned about ConnectALL being an independent solution. Could you please elaborate what it means? Because I see something like plugin. Is there any difference between a plugin and your ConnectALL solution?
Yes, very good question. Back about a decade ago, we started out this integration product line by developing add-ons for different products like Jira and TFS. and simply creating point-to-point solutions, like from one Jira to one TFS, for example. About 5 or 6 years ago, customers started asking, well, we don't like the extra maintenance of a plugin. You have to upgrade it or install a new version every time we do say a Jira upgrade. It's also just a single point-to-point plugin, so it's harder to manage. Only the administrators can work with it. So we came up with the solution of ConnectALL, so that it does require plugins. It runs as a separate application. It communicates to the applications using all REST APIs, which is a standard available communication strategy. So we use that to communicate to the applications. Your administrators, there's really nothing for them to set up in their applications other than granting you the correct access to the applications to communicate. So in a lot of ways, it's much better. It allows us to, allows the applications to upgrade. Typically, their remote APIs are not impacted, so it doesn't impact ConnectALL. So, and it also allows us to more easily scale the system. As you can imagine, if ConnectALL was an add-on or a plugin, it would put a performance load on your application server. It's taking up more memory, more CPU cycles. Having it deployed remotely helps us to manage that and scale that better.
We have another question here. Do I need to change my process flow when using ConnectALL or when mapping the configurations?
The answer is it depends. Maybe you would want to change your process flow, and just consider the scenario. You've got, say, your service desk in Servicenow. They're creating tickets and they go through some process of review and triage and communicate with the customers. They have some values for status that they communicate to the customer. And then if that data is synchronized over to Quality Center, maybe the Quality Center team has a different process, a different set of stages, maybe a different way of categorizing the priority or the urgency. So this is your chance to look at your processes. Maybe decide that you want to change your processes to be more in line with the other teams that you're working at. So no, as you saw, you could see that we can map the statuses, map the priorities. You can map them if you want, but this is a good opportunity to take a step back, look at the processes and figure maybe there's a more optimal way, a more consistent way of doing those processes.
All right, thanks a lot, Dog. We don't have any more questions. Before we end this session, I would like to invite everyone to participate in our upcoming webinars for ConnectALL. You will see that in our website. Okay, thanks a lot for attending. Thanks a lot, Dog, for this wonderful session. So we'll see you again next time. Bye.